we have Mr. Tony Blodget. So Tony is a regional leader. His region closed 1,954 loans for $750 million. His goal for 2020 is $750 million. While Tony is not an active loan officer today, once upon a time, he used to use Mortgage Coach as a producer and had done over 1,000 TCAs. Favorite book is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Favorite quote is happiness is a mindset, not a destination. And his favorite features of Mortgage Coach are the TCA Live and the WHATS app. So Tony Blodget, I'm going to bring Josh Middle in. I don't know if you want to script it and just do the ring ring, or whether you want to just provide some sales leadership from what you've heard. How do you want to play this, Tony?
Yeah, I think what I've picked up from everybody so far is, the exact process that I would always do, and something that I've always talked to my loan officers about, which is to shift the conversation, right? I mean, you need to, I don't know if we all got this from the same book, but, always asking where the referral came from, endorsing that referral partner if it was from a realtor, or acknowledging where it came from. And then really shifting into, quoting you an interest rate is a complex process. And there's some questions I have to ask you to be able to get to what the best interest rate would be. And as most of us know, interest rates do change on a daily basis. And one of the things that I do, Dave, and you and I have done some calls on this, and this is why I said Rate Watch is my favorite part of the Mortgage Coach experience, is because I think talking about fiscal literacy is really important during the loan process, because I think what borrowers don't realize is that interest rates do change, sometimes multiple times throughout the day, definitely on a daily basis. And during the time that they're getting pre-approved until they find a home, there could be a difference in what the market interest rate is. And so we need to address that. And by addressing that up front, I think it takes away some of the certainty that they're even going to be able to get an exact interest rate quote from you on that conversation. Because as many of you have already pointed out on this call, you just can't give someone a rate that day. Or as Jeremy said, well, look, it's whatever rate you want today, So I think that that's an important part of the process is, first of all, understanding fiscal literacy, understanding mortgage-backed securities and how they move. And then what I would do is use the mobile app and actually share, if I have them in my office, which is my preferred way of meeting with the client, I would bring up the Mortgage Coach widget either on my phone or on my computer and show them the volatility in the market. As you know, Dave, I like to use the day watch and really show them how much the market is moving. Or I'll just send screenshots right from my phone, or use the share feature within Rate Watch and say, hey, just so you know, this is what the last week has looked like in regards to interest rates. And just know that I'm going to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on, because locking in the very best rate on the wrong day can cost you thousands of dollars. And so I think that that's one aspect I want to make sure I got out on this call, is when I think about rate, I think about making sure that in your process, we're all going to ask this series of questions. We're going to divert them from the question, but in that process of building rapport, you have to also set yourself up as someone who is a student of the market, and you're going to be giving them good advice on the timing of when to best lock in their interest rate, and that's a critical piece. So other two notes that I took, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, the other two things I wanted to point out is really for our loan officers on this call. Obviously, you're getting a lot of great scripts today on how to divert away from what's your rate today. But something that I've noticed in the market, and again, I'm a regional leader, so I'm not selling loans every day. I'm looking at this business from a different perspective most of the time. And one of the things I noticed that I think we're not used to is that the secondary market really isn't paying for higher interest rates. And so you really need to, as it relates to specifically when you get to the point of quoting the actual interest rate, I think it's really important today more than ever to look through that rate stack and find the best value. Obviously, you're going to dump those options into a TCA so that you can show the borrower the different options, but you need to look beyond the par interest rate and find the rate that's the most value and what the secondary market is paying the most for, what coupon it is. And you can't do that just simply by going to the closest to par rate, which I think so many of us have been trained to do over time. And the last point I want to make about this whole conversation around what's your rate is that what's the alternative if you're not able to maintain the rate that you have on your rate sheet? There's two options. Either one, you're not able to turn this conversation into where you're creating more value for this person than what they, shift the conversation to the advice over price, and you ultimately lose that customer, or you're going to go to your company and you're going to try to get a pricing exception so that you can match a price so that you can even have a chance at this deal. Both of which are very dangerous and expensive. And I just made a couple notes here. For a region my size, which is not a huge region, just giving up 25 basis points of pricing exception on average would cost over $180,000 a month in actual revenue into into a region or into a branch. And when you think about that, I mean, that's all the cost to pay for all the processors, underwriters, and funders within your whole team, just by a quarter of a discount point. So these things are important so that you don't lose clients and so that you build rapport, but they're also important from the business standpoint of this industry, which is maintaining margin. And the last thing is that as a regional leader, I have to look at these numbers all the time. And your branch manager or your regional or someone is going to be looking at leakage. And if there's constant leakage, because as a loan officer, you're not able to have this conversation with your borrowers where you're able to maintain margin and shift the conversation off of rate. I mean, the rate sheet you have is dependent on the support staff you have, the rent that you pay, all of the, the comp that you're paid, all of those are factors. And you've chosen to work in that environment. And so as a result, the pricing is a mechanism of all of that, calculation. And when leakage occurs, when you're not able to hold margin, when you're constantly asking for price exceptions because you don't put in place these tactics, then what happens is that you have to maintain a higher margin on your rate sheet to account for that leakage. And ultimately, you're going to be staring down the barrel of higher interest rates on your rate sheet on a daily basis and making your job more difficult. So those are just a couple of things that when I hear the conversation about rate, Dave, I can't help but bring up a few of those thoughts. I hope that's helpful.
Oh, dude, you killed it. And this call is epic. I mean, we've had originators talk about Triangle of Trust, how they're flipping the conversation, and then having leadership and management come up and look at this from a business perspective just makes this call super rich.